Homesteaders. I hope you're doing well. I miss seeing all of you each month, but I'm loving that we're getting to do this learning opportunity together. I'm bringing some videos to you about crochet. I'm giving videos for 3 different levels, and this one will be for people who have learned to do their basic crochet stitches but are ready to move on to working with patterns. I hope you find this helpful. I'm gonna go ahead and flip the camera around to show you what I'm doing. All right, ladies, so now you've mastered your basic crochet stitches and you have, done some scarves or dishcloths or, simple square items. Now you're ready to move on to patterns. So I wanted to start off with some recommendations for places to look for patterns. When I first was starting to crochet, I subscribed to this magazine, and this was a really great resource, and so I'm going to be showing you some information about patterns from that. But sadly, that magazine doesn't exist anymore, and from what I can tell, it looks like it was purchased by Yarnspirations. So there's no print copy, but you can go to yarnspirations.com, and they have a lot of great crochet and pattern resources there. Ravelry.com is also a great resource. It has literally hundreds of thousands of patterns on there, and you can filter it by skill level and yarn weight and type of project and so many different things. So if you have a particular type of project you're looking for and you really want to have a large resource base, Ravelry is a good option. But if you're just kind of browsing for patterns, it might get a little overwhelming because there are so many. Another option is knitrowan.com. As you can tell by the name, they do more knit stuff, but they do have some crochet patterns available for free. And then also VickiHowell.com. Vicki Howell is a woman who has worked in the knit and crochet industry for like 17 years or something like that, and she has a subscription box that I subscribe to, and she does Ask Me Mondays on Facebook Live, and had a show on the DIY network called The Knit Show. And so she's a great source, and her website does have some patterns on there that some are you pay for, some are free. Same thing with I don't know about Yarnspirations, if it's all free or some paid, but these other ones, these all have some that are paid, some that are free, so you do have to pay attention to that. And so now let's move on to patterns. So with patterns, there's going to be a lot of kind of introductory information before you get into the actual pattern. And then there's options of written patterns like this, or you can have diagram style patterns like this. And so let's start with some of the details that we have on here. So we have, first here we've got yarn suggestions. Some patterns will suggest a specific yarn. Some will just have a yarn weight recommendation. And then they will recommend a hook size to go along with the pattern. Now, sometimes this may not be the hook size that you would automatically associate with the yarn weight recommended. For instance, if you're wanting a airier sort of product, then it's going to go up a size in hook or two. If you're wanting something that's really tight and stiff, then they may go down a size. So you do want to kind of pay attention to the crochet hook size and yarn weight that they are recommending. And then it'll usually have a list of the notions that you'll need. Maybe you might need yarn needles, you might need stitch markers, might need buttons. It just kind of depends on the pattern. Some will list a skill level like this, some don't. That's kind of just depends on who's producing the pattern. And then we'll come up here and we'll look here. Okay, this one says size to fit most adults, but I'm going to flip over here to another pattern here. This one has sizing for different age children. And here you can see it's got the first size here and then these two in the parentheses. Now how that works is when you look over here in the pattern, it's going to give you the instructions for the first size outside of the parentheses and then the instructions for the next size in the parentheses. So like for if you're doing it for a 4-year-old, then you're going to chain 85. If you're doing it for an 8-year-old, then you're going to chain 101. And so there'll be instructions like that, like here, throughout the pattern. Now coming back over here to this one. Next, we've got finished measurements. That's going to tell you approximately how big your product should be. This is important particularly with garments, and that's where gauging becomes important. If you've got like the other pattern where you've got multiple sizes, it's going to list the finished measurement sizes for each of those sizes. And that's going to help you determine which size you need to be making. Gauge, that is going to be instructions for creating a sample that lets you make sure that the hook you're using is working properly with the yarn you're using to get the finished measurements you want. So, for example, if you are an extra tight crocheter, then you may find that you need to size up a crochet hook to get the proper measurements. Or maybe if you've changed yarns and that yarn is a little different, doing this gauge swatch is going to help you make sure you're getting the proper finished measurements that you want. And some of them will be like this one, where the gauge is based off the beginning of the project. And so that's pretty easy because then you just start working the project and make sure if it's working right. On other ones, like this one, it's going to give you a square gauge swatch that you work. Typically it's a 4-inch square, and it'll tell you how many stitches and rows should give you, and the type of stitch to use usually it'll tell you, and that'll tell you make a 4-inch square. If that all lines up, then you've got your right hook and your right yarn. Now, abbreviations. So this pattern is pretty awesome in that it shows all of the abbreviations you will use plus special abbreviations and techniques. A lot of patterns won't necessarily list these abbreviations because those are the common ones. They'll a lot of times just list the special abbreviations, and it gives you a nice description of what those mean. Now I have here in this catalog a nice little master abbreviation list. It doesn't cover everything, but it covers a good selection of the abbreviations. You can also get lists like this off of like Pinterest, that sort of thing. And then there's also the diagram type pattern, and it's going to have all of these symbols on the diagram, and this is your key to know what all those symbols mean so that you can read that diagram. And as far as using the diagram or the words, that's sort of a personal preference sort of thing. For me, it kind of depends on the type of the project, but I find the diagrams really nice, especially if I'm working something like a doily, that sort of thing. So then you'll find here on the instructions, you see all these, little abbreviations. You've got your keys to that over here. You can see here at the end of the instructions for the round, it's got this, line over, and then this number of the stitches, the single crochets, or the number of bobbles and chain 2 spaces, that sort of thing. That's to tell you on that row, once you've completed it, you should have this number of these stitches. So if you get to the end of the row and maybe you're a little worried that you got something wrong, you can count around what you've done and see if it lines up with what they're telling you. Let's see here. And then you see here they've got these asterisks here. you'll see those in patterns where you're going to be repeating the same thing over over the row or the round. And so you read what it tells you to do, and then here it says repeat from the asterisk. So you're going to come, once you've done those, you come back to the asterisk and you continue to do that around until you've completed the round or the row, depending on what you're working in. And sometime, let me see if there's an example in here. You'll see these like this, where there's these brackets. And so here it's telling you've got both an asterisk and a bracket. So you come along, you do these steps. Okay, you see your bracket. You do what's in the bracket, and then it tells you here to do that 4 times. So you come back and do what's in the bracket 4 times. Then you keep going and do it, and then it comes here and says to repeat from there to here once. So you're going to go back and do that again. After you've done those stitches, you come back and do these ones. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. But I'm going to do a little pattern to kind of help you see what I mean. A couple of things real quick. If you are doing something where you're working in the round, the pattern I'm going to be showing you here, it tells you to start with chain 4 and join them to get that ring. But some patterns you'll see will say make an adjustable ring, or maybe some will say a magic ring, something like that. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick, since that may not be something you've learned yet. So you're going to take your yarn and wrap it around your fingers. Whoops, I'm losing track of it there. Okay, so you want the short end here over on this side, and then your long working one there. Then you're going to take your crochet hook, come around here to this side, insert it through, and you're going to pull that yarn around like that. Take your fingers out. Now you've got your working yarn here, and there's that short thing. Now you can go ahead and do a chain, seal that up, so then you're ready to go. Then you just work your stitches inside of that ring. Okay, I don't know how many I did, and then you just grab that string and you pull it, and that'll pull it in tight like that. And then you can just join it together by doing a slip stitch through that first stitch. Okay, and there you've got your little ring, your little circle to start making your circle out around. So there's that. All right, so now we're going to go over to the pattern. I'm going to work for you to help you with reading the pattern. So this is a pattern from my Yarnier subscription from Vicki Howell. And so you can see it's got the written instructions. It's also got the diagram here. And so I'm going to kind of show it to you looking both at the written instructions and the diagram. All right, it's going to require 2, oops, come over here. So this pattern was written for a finer weight yarn than what I'm using because there was yarn provided in the subscription box. But so I'm going to adjust, since I'm going to use a worsted weight yarn, I'm adjusting up and using the eye hook that's usually recommended for that. And then, so it's going to come out bigger, but it's not, since this is just a sample, my sizing doesn't really matter. Okay, so A, this is going with A, that means your primary color. So I'm going to make this my primary color, chain 4. So let's go ahead and get that. And then you can see down here on the diagram, you can see those 4 chains. And then you're supposed to join it with a slip stitch. So, oops, it helps if my hook's the right way. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and we'll come around here and join in my first chain. All right, now round 1 with a chain 3 counts as double crochet. All right, so that chain 3 is gonna, and you can see it down here, that chain 3 coming up and making that double chain. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, do 2 double crochet in the ring. So kind of gotta get in there in the middle of those. And sort of pull it over to make room for your others. All right, and see how it's got this chain 3 double crochet in ring 3 times. So I'm going to repeat these 2 steps 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. Now my 3 double crochets. And I'll show you here on the diagram how you can see those as well. Okay, so I've done those 3, the 3 chains and the 3 double crochets 3 times. Now it says a chain 3 again. Oh, and I was going to show you here. So those were those around, and then here's now those last 3 chains. 3. Okay, chain 3, join with slip stitch. So join with slip stitch in top of beginning chain 3. Okay, so, and it tells you you've got 4 double crochet clusters and 4 3 chain spaces. Now it says to cut that. Where's my scissors? Here we go. Oops. I'll just close that up. All right, and then join B with a slip stitch in any chain 3 space. And you can see that here, there's that slip stitch being put there into that space. I'll get my B over here. Pull it up through there. Oh, it's getting away from me. Here we go. Join with the slip stitch. And with B, chain 4, it counts as, okay, chain 4 counts as the double chain and a chain 1 space. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, so in the next corner space, so I've joined in this one, so we're moving over to this one. Chain, wait, okay, you're going to 3 double crochet and then chain 3 and then 3 double crochet again, all in that corner space. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, now in my chain 3 space, and then my 3 double crochets. One thing I wanted to mention too is that's important is if you are using multiple colors in a pattern, you need to make sure that you, or multiple yarns I should say, that you are using the same type of yarn. If you're using different types of yarn, unless it's a pattern that calls for that, or it's like a, you know, one of those stash buster patterns or whatever for using up leftovers, if you use different types of yarn, your pattern's not going to come out even. So even though you may love that one yarn over there and that other yarn over there and think they'd look awesome together, if they're not the same weight, they're going to end up not coming out right together. Okay, and you can see there what I just did, those 3 double crochets, the 3 chains and the 3 double crochets. Now, and you can see here it's going to tell me to do 1 chain, and come back here. So yeah, there it said to do that in the corner. Then there's that chain 1. Now it says to repeat 2 more times. So there's my chain 1, and now I'm going to do those 3 double crochets. And all of this, you know, pattern reading stuff applies whether you're working on something that is worked in a circle like this, in the round, worked flat, however, you know, the pattern is worked, all the same principles apply. You just have to think about whether you're working something that's flat or something that's round. Okay, so I've done my 3 double crochets, 3 chains, and another 3 double crochets there. So now I do my 1, chain 1, and now I do my 3 double crochets. Oops, catching my yarn there. And then the 3 chains, the 3 double crochets, and my chain 1. Okay, so now let's come back here to the pattern. So I did those 2 repeats. Now it's saying to 3 double crochet, chain 3, and 2 double crochet in the first corner here where we had joined in. Oops, I got a tie there on my yarn. Oh well. Okay, do my 1, 2, 3. Being a little bit sloppy with my tails here since this isn't an actual project, but 2. So there's my 2 double crochets, and then now it's telling me join with a slip stitch in the 3rd chain of beginning chain 4. So there's, I find it easier to just go to the end here where I know that was 4, and then I come back here to 3 and join that with the slip stitch. I said my tails are a little sloppier than normal, but there you go. There's the start to that granny square. I'm not going to mess with doing round 3 for you, but that shows you kind of how to read these patterns. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me and I'd be happy to help you out. And I hope you have a good rest of the day. Bye.